So question 1, these are mirror images of the questions in the book. They're not the same questions, so don't complain that they're not the book questions in the book, because they're not. They're just similar, so you can try and follow on. So write each power as with a positive exponent. So we know that a to the negative x here, on the right hand side here, a to the negative x is going to be 1 over a to the x. So if we do this question here, 5 to the negative 1 will be 1 over 5 to the 1, and 5 to the 1 is just 5. So that final answer is 1/5. Y to the negative 2 will be 1 over y squared, and it stays like that. D to the negative 3 will be 1 over d to the 3. This one, we can do it in two ways actually. We could do it as 1 over xy to the positive 2, and then we have the law of exponents that says we can multiply this 2 inside to each of the x and the y, so it becomes 1 over x squared y squared. And what we've got there is that 2 multiplies by the 1 that's on the x and the 1 that's on the y. 2 times 1 is 2, and 2 times 1 is 2, to give you x squared y squared. Now, interesting here, the negative here has nothing to do with the negative there. So this becomes negative 1 over x to the 4th. And that's how we leave it. And the bottom question, the negative now comes down in the bracket, and the 4 becomes positive, so that negative goes downstairs. Now, anytime you have a fourth power and a negative sign, a negative times a negative times a negative times a negative 4 times will be a positive. So this is 1 over x to the power 4. This question here, write each power as a negative. So we're going to do the opposite of what we just did. So therefore, 1 over 6 squared, if we were to bring the 6 upwards, it would become 6 to the negative 2. And we can leave it like that because that's what the question is asking for, a negative exponent. So 1 over y to the 4th, if we were to bring the y upwards, it would be y to the negative 4. Question says here, evaluate expresses a fraction in lowest terms. So 10 to the negative 2 would be 1 over 10 squared, and here we can work it out. 10 squared is 100, so it's 1 over 100. 2 to the negative 3 would be 1 over 2 cubed, and 2 cubed is 8, so the answer is 1 over 8. 4 to the negative 2 would be 1 over 4 squared, 1 over 16, and 3 to the negative 3, 1 over 3 cubed, and 3 cubed is 27, so it's 1 over 27. A little complicated now. We get 2 to the negative 1 is 1 over 2 to the 1, which is 1 over 2.5, and 1 over 4 squared is 1 over 16. If we get our fraction hat on now, 1/2 is 8 over 16 plus 1 over 16, 9 over 16. On the bottom here, 7 to the negative 1 is 1 over 7 to the 1, or 1 over 7. 2 to the negative 1 is 1 over 2, and 14 to the negative 1 is 1 over 14. Common denominator is 14. If we look at this one, that's 2 over 14. If we look at this one, that's 7 over 14, and then 1 over 14 is 1. So your final answer is 10 over 14, and that will reduce to 5 over 7. So we introduce now the three little rules of powers. We've got a to the m to the n, where these two are very close to each other, and we multiply mn. We've got the division a to the m over a to the m, and we subtract. And then the one we know, we start with a to the m times a to the n is addition m plus n. So each of these 4 questions here talks about one or the other. So a here is going to be simple. That's going to be number 1 on the top here. So we're going to multiply the powers. Negative 2 times negative 1 is positive 2. 6 squared is 36. C here is going to revolve around this one here. And we're going to subtract the powers, so it's 6 to the 3 minus negative 1. And minus minus makes a positive, so 3 plus 1 is 4. 6 to the 4, I haven't got a clue, it's 36 times 36. You can work it out yourselves. E here is our last one. So we're going to add the powers. Negative 3 plus 5 is 2, so it's 5 squared, and 5 squared is 25. And the bottom question here, what goes here is a 1. 6 on its own is 6 to the 1, so we can add those two powers on top. We get 1 plus 2, which is going to be 3 in a minute. So that gives us 6 to the 3 over 6 to the 4. And we can subtract the powers. 6 to the 3 minus 4 is 6 to the negative 1, or we could write it as 1 over 6. So a mixture of question here, we're looking for positive exponents. We'll go to the blue pen, I think, because the yellow pen is a bit bright. So number 1, we're going to add the powers here. What's negative 2 plus 3? Because we add the powers, that's going to be 1, x to the 1, which we can just write as x. Here, we've got some couple of things to look at. We're going to do multiplication. 4 times 3 we know is 12. And then B, we've got negative 3 plus negative 2 is going to be negative 5, so your final answer is 12. B to the negative 5, and they want positive exponents, so I'm running out of space here. It's going to be 12 over B to the 5. So I might run out of space in a minute. Y cubed divided by y negative 2, so we can subtract it here. We can imagine it's like a fraction, so it's 3 minus negative 2, and 3 minus negative 2 is the same as plus 2, so it's y. 3 plus 2 is 5, y to the 5. D here, we can do the numbers first. 12 divided by 4, we know that they reduce 1 and 3, so we get a 3 on top. And then the powers, a little complicated. Negative 2 minus negative 4 is negative 2 plus 4, so it's positive 2. So your final answer is 3x squared. This one's fairly straightforward. We're going to multiply these two powers because of the previous law of exponents. Negative 2 times negative 3 is positive 6. Last question is probably the one that causes most problems, and we'll see why now, because on this 3 here we've got an imaginary 1, on the x we've got an invisible 1. Now negative 2 is going to multiply by each one of these exponents in turn. So you take the 3 here, multiply the power. 1 times negative 2 is negative 2, so 3 to the negative 2. Take the x, 1 times negative 2 is negative 2. Now take the y, negative 2 times negative 2 is 4. So your final answer, put it back in blue, is going to be y to the 4 on top. 3 to the negative 2 is 1 over 3 squared, which is 9 on the bottom. X to the negative 2 is x squared on the bottom. Again, nice work with the fractions here. Anytime you have a fraction to a negative power, it just flips upside down and you get a positive power. Now what's 3 over 1 squared? Well, 3 squared is 9, 1 squared is 1, and that equals 9. Next question, flip the fraction so it becomes 10 over 3 to the 5, and 10 to the power 5 is a big number, 10,000. That's probably needs one more 0. Thank you. And 3 to the 5 is 2, 4, 3. So we leave it like that. A fraction here to a negative power, so we flip the fraction and make it a positive power. So you flip the fraction goes upside down. That means we can make the power positive. 4 squared is 16, and 9 squared is 81. There's your final answer. Same thing here, the negative doesn't matter, it still stays in the middle, and we flip the fraction and the power becomes positive. Negative, let's put the negative with one or the other, 2 or the 5, doesn't matter. But a negative sign cubed is negative. Negative times a negative times a negative is negative. 2 cubed is 8 on top. 5 cubed is 1, 2, 5 on the bottom. It stays negative because the power is a cube, which is an odd number. Here we get 1 over 2. We can't do anything with that to begin with. Negative 1/4 to the negative 2. Let's flip it first. Negative 4 over 1 squared. Power becomes positive when you flip the fraction. So we get 1 over 2. Now a negative sign squared is positive. 4 squared is 16. 1 squared is 1. 16 over 2 is 8. Last set of questions here. And we've got a fraction to a negative power, so we can flip the fraction. AB over 1 to the positive 3, and now we can multiply in. We know we've got an invisible 1 there and an invisible 1 there, so this becomes a cubed, b cubed. 1 cubed is 1, so I won't write it in because it then becomes a cubed, b cubed. So 1 over 7u to the negative 1. We flip the fraction and we get 7u over 1 to the 1. And of course we've got these imaginary 1s on the 1 and the u and the 7, and we just multiply through. Well, 1 times 1 is 1, and 1 times 1 for u is 1, so 7u. Flip this fraction here, so we get w cubed over g to the 4th. Flip the fraction first, and that gives us to a positive power. And we can multiply now, so 3 times 3 is going to give me w to the 9, and then 4 times 3 is going to give me g to the 12 on bottom. Last question here, let's flip the fraction first because we've got negative power, so it gives me 4b cubed over 3a squared, and then to the positive power. Now what you notice is again on this 4 we've got an invisible 1, and on the 3 we've got an invisible 1. So now the 2 that's outside will multiply by every power. So 1 for the 4, 1 times 2 is 2, so 4 squared. B cubed, 3 times 2 is 6, b to the 6th. On the bottom we've got this 3, the 1 times 2 is 2, so 3 squared. And then 2 times 2 is a to the 4th. So the final answer is 16 b to the 6th over 9 a to the power 4.